You did?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Kayser. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so sorry. I was sitting there waiting for you guys on a Google Meets thing.
Oh.
Somehow is not where anybody was. So
You have a
we
lot
got
of
it now. How are you guys?
Great. There's a lot of people here waiting to hear you speak.
Oh, well, I hope I have something good for them to say to them.
Definitely.
I don't know. Today was a really long day. Don't worry, I will get over it. But I had 5 ICU patients and then an emergency patient that we couldn't wait to get COVID testing on, who actually did great. And I'm really glad we got it done. And in the middle of the case, it turned out her COVID test was negative. And then I had a very sad case of a guy who was a prisoner who was Hep C positive and COVID positive.
Oh my God.
Who we had to do emergently. So it was kind of a busy day.
Well, we're so glad to have you here to speak to us. I'm Alex. I've been an intern for Dr. Kayser now since July. It's been a really great campaign. We've been working really hard and got a month to go. And yeah, we're the Minority Health Professional Mentorship Program. So we pair up students of minority status with current graduate students in the health schools from medicine, PA, pharmacy, nursing, you name it. We have mentors in those programs. And this is actually our first event, and you're the first speaker for this semester, so we're really excited to have you. Dr. Enneking is a professor of anesthesiology and orthopedics and rehabilitation, and she's a medical director at the UF Health Pre-Surgical Clinic, and now she is the 2020 candidate for Florida State House District 21. So I will start with the first questions. Let me stop sharing so we can just talk to you.
Well, first, let me just say thank you guys all for being here. I was thrilled when Alex asked me if I would do this because, I have been in medicine for a long time now, and it is, seeing yourself and somebody who is senior to you and be like, oh, that's cool, I could do that. Is like hugely important. And so this is, getting the chance to talk to students is really near and dear to my heart because we all need that. And I needed it when I was at your stage. And it's just so super important. So anyway, thank you for letting me do this is all I really meant to say.
Thank you so much. So our first question is basically, how did you get into medicine? What was your path like, starting from undergrad, where most of us are, and then to now?
Yeah, when I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was an undergrad. I will be quite honest with you. I really thought that I might want to be a PE teacher. I was kind of a real sporty kind of gal, and I really thought that was maybe what I wanted to do coaching, because I had done that while I was in high school and during all my summers. And I taught, lifeguarding and swimming and water safety and that sort of thing. And I coached swimming. And so I thought that might be what my career path might be. But then I'm sure, like many of you, I found a major that I just thought was so cool. So this is back. I'm gonna date myself here now. This is back. I graduated from high school, like when your parents were graduating from high school, or maybe even before that. And so I majored in molecular biology. And at that time, there weren't any textbooks for molecular biology. So we were like reading out of, a Scientific American to read about, the stuff we were doing. And it was just, it kind of put all the pieces of biochemistry and chemistry and biology and physics together for me. And I just thought that was so neat. And so I got into that. And, I'll be honest with you, at the time, it was sort of like every molecular biology major went to medical school. And it was as much a sort of what your next natural step was going to be. And so I did that, but I didn't apply for it back then. Also, they only gave the MCAT once a year. And I kind of, after I took organic chemistry, I'm like, oh my God, I have had enough of school. I cannot do this another day. Have you ever hit that wall? Yeah. And so I took a semester abroad. Actually, I wanted to take a semester off and go out to Colorado and learn how to ski, because I am truly a Florida girl, and I wanted to learn how to snow ski. And so I like this. Oh, and back then you could only call home on Sundays because that's when the rates were low. Otherwise, it was too expensive to call. So on one Sunday, I'd call home and I'd say, "Okay, I'm gonna, take next semester off." And my dad is like, "Over my dead body, you're gonna go out there and fall in love with some pot smoking ski bum who's gonna live off of you the rest of your life." And I'm like, "I don't give a shit what you say," and hung up on him. And he was like, "You can do whatever you want, but you have to stay in school." So I called him back the next Sunday and I said, okay, you're right. I'm going to stay in school, but I'm going to do an abroad program and I'm going to go to Israel.
Wow.
And there's like dead silence on the other end of the phone. That was like, it's just, was a great way to get under my parents' skin, and actually I wanted to go there for sort of what I thought were three very good reasons. One was I wanted to learn more about religion. I grew up Catholic and I didn't really understand religion that well. And I thought if I went there, it would really help parse things out for me a little bit better, and it did. But the second was, in my lifetime, I thought that region of the world might be really important. And I thought it was important for me to kind of understand that whole conflict. And it, that turned out to actually be true. And then the third thing, it turns out Israel's on the Mediterranean. It's got a beautiful beach. It's a lovely area to be. And it was, I knew it would bug the crap out of my parents. And so all of those things made it kind of an ideal thing, but I missed taking the MCAT. That was the long and short of that. And so I had to wait until the following year to take it. So I had to sit out a year. And that was a really good year for me, because it made me think about, did I really, really, really want to go to medical school, or was I just doing it because, that's what all the other majors did? And I really decided I wanted to do it. And that, I think, is a super important step for any of you guys. I sat on our admissions committee for many, many, many years. And oftentimes the very best applicants that we get are the ones that have been rejected from school the first year, because they then go, oh, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to put myself through this another time? And you have to really look deep and decide yes or no. Do you really want to do it? And so when my husband, who is now the chairman of orthopedics here at UF, took 3 years to get into medical school. He got rejected that many times and only got into the University of Florida the day after school had started. And so don't give up the hope. I mean, I think he is a great example of that. But every day that he would wake up, he'd go, oh, good, I get to be a doctor today. And every day that I would wake up, I'd go, maybe I should have been a PE teacher. And so these are all sort of normal things to feel. That's how I found it. I love, love, love what I do, which is anesthesiology. And again, sort of fell into that because my husband was a year ahead of me and he was already matched in Texas, and I needed to find a program there. And they had a really good anesthesia program. And I was sort of like, well, I'm going to do this for a year. And if I don't like it, very naively, I'm like, I'll just work in the ERs and then we'll go and do a residency that I want to do. I mean, that would never have happened,
Yeah.
And so I guess sort of part of what I'm trying to say is that this journey is never straightforward for anybody, and life kind of gets in the way of lots of things. And there isn't any, kind of correct path to it. Everybody's just got a different way of doing this, and that's okay. And if it takes you longer to figure out what you want to do, I mean, look at me, I still today can't figure out what I want to do when I grow up. That's okay. Nobody is going to hold that against you, and it will make you a much better, more well-rounded person. And goodness knows we need as many well-rounded people as we can get in medicine.
Yeah, definitely.
And so if you have some passion that you want to go, scratch, and for me, it was clearly to go, because I grew up here in Gainesville, it was to go see the world and maybe to never come back to Gainesville. And then look what happened to me, right? And so do it. Go travel. Go do, go take a year and make some money so you can pay off some debt if that makes you more comfortable. Whatever it is that you need to do so that you are living your life and your life isn't being dominated by what you want to do when you grow up. Okay, that's kind of like life lesson 1 there.
Yeah, definitely what we needed to hear. So our next question is, what is your typical work life? I know it's like very hectic. I know you've taken on a lot. So how do you start the week, and what are your responsibilities throughout?
Just on a general week?
Yeah, on a general week.
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly how to answer that. My life has kind of been lived in 5-year segments. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it was like 5 years when I was kind of in medical school, and 5 years when I was in training. And then when I first got to Gainesville, I had 2 little kids, and I had a husband that was incredibly busy, and I worked my ass off for the first 5 years. And I was like, every night I would be like, oh my God, is this what I really want? What did I get myself into? And so eventually I sort of figured out that if I was going to stay in the game for a long time, that I needed to make my job work for my life and not my life work for my job. Okay, there's life lesson number 2. And that was a really important one. I give people that advice all the time in every kind of field that there is. Because if you are miserable in your life, you're going to be miserable in everything else. But if your job is working for your life, then you're like, ooh, this is good. I can do this. And you don't want to be up every night writing down your pro-con list about what you should or shouldn't be doing. So I'm in academic medicine. And that means that I take care of patients, and I usually do that anywhere from, like this week, I'm taking care of patients 3 days this week, but right now it's mostly I take care of them about 2 days a week. I have been as many as 4 days a week taking care of patients, and as little as 1 day a week, sort of depending upon what all my other responsibilities were. But I also, while I'm taking care of patients, I'm teaching students, and and that is always fun. And then I am also doing academic stuff. Like this Friday, I have to do an M&M with one of our residents where we're going to be presenting a case that we did, and we had to look up all this research about it and then put together a presentation to talk to our department. And she'll probably then present it at our national meeting, and sort of stuff like that. Or I'm doing research, or I'm doing, administration, trying to figure out how to make things better. So my job has been very varied over the years. And that's one of the things I love about it, is that there are some consistencies to it, but every 5 years it's kind of taken a little twist and done something a little bit different. And that's one of the cool things about being in medicine. No matter what field of medicine you're in, you can grow as the field grows. And in almost every different type of field, there's parts where you can do research, or where you could do just patient care, or you could do quality improvement, where all you're doing is trying to make things better. So there's just so many things that you can do. I see somebody quickly wrote down, does academic medicine differ from the role of an MD, PhD? You don't have to have a PhD to be in academic medicine. You don't have to have an MD to be in academic medicine. If you want to be primarily sort of a researcher that's funded sort of by the NIH or something like that, you probably want to be an MD, PhD, but that's like 2 or 3% of the people that are in academic medicine. So you don't have to do that. And I would suggest you do that only if you have something that you dearly are just fascinated by, and you really want to, you know, figure something out. Like, for instance, one of my colleagues has a sister who had aplastic anemia, and so has done PhD work studying bone marrow. And because they really, really wanted to do that, right? But it's you know, you don't have to do that to be able to do teaching. You want another question? You want me to read them off of the chat? Is that easier for you?
Oh yeah.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, so thank you for telling us a little bit about like what you're doing at present. So just to flash back to March, and I'm sure you get plenty of questions like that, but how has your job in healthcare changed since March? What has happened, and how has your outlook in medicine changed since COVID-19? And what realizations have you kind of come away with since that occurred?
Well, a couple of things, and these are going to probably be a little bit disjointed and all over the place. Let me just say, this has been a hugely scary, awful, horrible thing for everybody, absolutely, for almost the entire world, right? We've had over 200,000 people that have died. We've had 15,000 people that have, about 15,000 people that have died in Florida. And it's scary. This is stuff that nobody knew existed the second week of February. I mean, just think about that. And so my job as a health professional is to be the calm person in the room, right? When the shit hits the fan and I walk into a room, I have to be very calm, because if I lose my stuff, then, oh my gosh, the whole room is going to be in a mess. So in many ways, I sort of feel like I have fulfilled that role here. And in part, my platform from running for office has really provided me with the opportunity to be able to take all this science stuff that was going on and explain it to lay people that just are like completely wigged out about this, and to sort of say what it is we know and what we don't know, and to be really transparent about it, and to be sort of sensible about it, to kind of bring the temperature down a little bit. So that's one thing. My personal role in early March, when all this started, because I have run our pre-op clinic, somebody asked me to go down to the pre-op clinic and start looking through all of our cases and looking for the most frail of our patients who we're going to be bringing into the hospital, and to talk to the surgeon and see if there was a way we could put off whatever the procedure was. And so I started, you know, digging through charts, calling surgeons, and sort of putting people off. Because at that point in time, we had no idea if our ICU was going to get filled up like that. And so I did that for a couple of days, and then quickly thereafter, the governor put in his order to cancel elective surgery. And since I was already sort of in the mode of canceling surgeries because of this, they said, well, hey, will you take this on? So I sat in front of a computer for 2 weeks, canceling cases and keeping this big spreadsheet of who had been canceled and who wasn't, and who needed to be done urgently within the month, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, so we did that. And then as we began to open up, and even before we really began to open up, we still had to do cases. And the level of anxiety in everybody was remarkable. So I was in the OR on the day when 9/11 happened. I don't even think you guys were probably born yet. But I had to, everybody got so distracted by this news that was happening that they weren't paying any attention to what we were doing. And I had to stop the surgery at our surgery center and say, we're going to finish these cases, but we're not going to start anymore because we're not safe. And I hadn't seen our staff that distracted since 9/11. I mean, that's how distracted people were. They were just scared that they were going to be bringing this home to their families. They didn't know who had it. They didn't know how to put the right kind of equipment on. Did we have enough of the right equipment? I mean, it just kind of, and it didn't help that our hospital, which did a great job, but they kept changing the protocols about every 37 seconds. And then that just, amped up the anxiety about it. And so as soon as there were some tests available, we began testing every single patient as they came in, and every single patient before they had surgery. And that just took the whole level of anxiety down to a manageable level. And so this has been, a frightening experience on a sort of personal and emotional level. And when you really have a lot of, when you see how sick these patients are, and they can, oh my God, are they sick? On the other hand, if you just want to look at the science, I have never seen science move so fast. And that part has been really cool. I mean, and if you want to nerd out about it, well, does this happen more by touching things, by breathing things in from across the room, or does it happen by just having somebody sneeze on you? I mean, and there have just been papers and papers and papers written about this, and every little bit just goes on. And we've got two kind of new entities that we've never seen before, ever. Like you always think that we know everything already, that all of the knowledge is there. But happy hypoxia, I've never seen patients come in whose oxygen levels are so low, and they're just they're breathing fast, but they don't really care. They don't really feel it. And I mean, that is just shocking. And then this whole issue about sort of total body inflammation causing thrombosis everywhere. We've just never, this is new. And so it's just been so interesting to be a part of this. And I feel incredibly fortunate that I have been in the position to help people understand it. Somebody asked about a vaccine. So if you had asked me that question in February, if they said, there's a new virus and it's going to kill 200,000 people, but we have an FDA approved vaccine for it, would you take it? I would say not only yes, but hell yes, of course. So the FDA, is the gold standard for medication safety in the world. The FDA was developed after a drug that was given to pregnant women back in the 50s and early 60s that had been developed in Germany, and it came over here and it was given to pregnant women so that they didn't have nausea while they were pregnant, but it was called thalidomide, and it created these terrible birth defects. And so people were like, well, you can't just foist a medicine on the American public. We need to have a scientific group that will say whether it's safe or not. And that's where the FDA was born. And the FDA has always been about safety. The FDA has never been political. Today, if you ask me if I was going to take one of those vaccines, knowing that there's how much political pressure there's been on it, and knowing that the FDA is not the organization that it was 6 months ago, I would say, show me the data. Let me sort of see for myself this safety data before I said to hundreds of millions of people, this is going to be safe. Because any vaccine that we do is going to have safety problems. I mean, there's always this sort of risk benefit and yin and yang of doing it. And you want to really make sure that the benefit is going to be worth that risk. And so today, I'm not going to say that I would get one in the first round. I don't feel comfortable saying that. And that's a terrible thing to say. Isn't that just a horrible thing to say? that I don't trust this, but I don't trust what this president has done to the scientific community that we depend upon. And if any of you are supporters of President Trump, I apologize for that, but I truly believe that. And so I'm not trying to offend you in any way, but I am offended by what has happened in our scientific community, because we as healthcare professionals have to help people understand science, because it's not always a linear thing, right? And we have to help them understand that, why some days we think a low-fat diet is good, and on other days why we think a low-carb diet is good. And it's because it's just not straightforward. And so you have to continue to work at this level of trust so that people have trust in what you're saying. And so I apologize if I'm not trying to be super political. I'm just trying to say that as a scientist, you really need to stand up for science.
That's what we really want to let everyone know, just to be vocal and to learn in school and definitely apply it. Now, Alice is going to ask a question. Alice Bravo.
So to expand on what you said about being a doctor in politics, are there any other experiences that motivate you to get involved in state politics? And why is it so important to be active?
Yeah, so I was always a very good voter, but run for office, oh no, that was not what, I was just too busy, right? I had all this stuff I was doing, but most of my career has been spent sort of in the hospital setting. And then I got asked if I would become the chairman of the Department of Dermatology on an interim basis. And I'm like, well, I'm not a dermatologist, right? But really, they just needed my sort of academic expertise. But that gave me the opportunity then to learn a whole bunch about clinic medicine. And I saw, in the hospital, we just take care of patients. If they come to the ER, we have to take care of them. It doesn't matter what their insurance status is, anything like that. But over in dermatology, I saw how not having insurance made it so you did not have access to healthcare. And during that time, that was when there was that whole discussion in 2016 about repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that a bunch of old, white, out of touch men in Washington were making decisions about healthcare that affects everybody and that was going to ruin the single best thing we had done in healthcare in my lifetime. And so I'd come home and I was kind of screaming at the TV. I was like, you don't have the vaguest idea what you're talking about. And you're going to take healthcare away and you don't even have another plan. Finally, I figured out that screaming at the TV was not a really effective way for change. So I decided to run for office, and that is truly what motivated me. But every day that I go to work, why I decided, I do this politics and I'm like, oh my God, I got to go back to work. This is just too political for me. And then I go back to work and I have a day like today where I took care of this guy who is in our correctional system who got such horrible treatment for so long that his disease process is so much further along. He hurt his hip 6 months ago, and basically his hip collapsed in 6 months. And it's so wrong. And somebody's got to stand up for that guy, right?
Yes.
And so now I'm like, damn it, I got to win. I got to be kind of part of this because somebody has got to be doing this. And I kind of looked around, I didn't see anybody else doing it. And that's why I'm so excited to see all of you guys on this, because you guys are the ones that are going to go into healthcare for the right reasons.
Most
Go
definitely.
there for the patients.
As you mentioned earlier, you wanted to scream at the TV at the white men in office. Were there any barriers that you faced as a woman in healthcare and in politics? And are they similar, or what are the differences that you've noticed?
I don't even know where to start to answer that question. So are there barriers to being a woman? Well, yeah, every day there are, like today when and it is no shame to get thought of as, oh, you must be the nurse. But when I've been a physician for 30 years and the nurse who brought this patient down looks at my resident who's been a physician for 3 months and says, well, doctor, what would you like me to do? And then says to me, can you please take this monitor back to the room for me? I'm like, no, I'll be doing that. And he'll take the monitor back. I mean, and it's just, and I don't do that in a bitchy way, because then you really are never going to get any traction, I promise you. But I do it in such a way to make sure that they know who they're talking to. And you really have to learn how to stick up for yourself every single day. And for those of you that are small, and those of you that have people of color, Black and brown and small, it is twice as hard. And I don't say that because I'm proud of that. And I don't say that to scare you. I probably am just confirming something that you already knew. And it is, but as a white woman and as a woman who has never had a problem standing up for herself and making herself heard, I think I have just only really come to understand the sort of double and triple barriers that there are for people. And I very purposefully make sure that I talk not only about all the doctor stuff that people have to learn every day, but about all that non-technical stuff, about how you need to answer the phone. So if you answer the phone, you say, hey, this is Maggie, then they're gonna have no idea who you are. But if you answer the phone and you say, hey, this is Dr. Zavoy, how can I help you? They treat you entirely differently. And so believe me, I answer, this is Dr. Enneking, how can I help you? 99 out of 100 times, even if I know who's on the other end of the phone. And it's little things like that that you sort of learn to do. And so yes, there are obstacles every way. I was the chairman of anesthesiology for many years, and I was truly the only woman in the room for a long time. And I learned, and it was really funny. We'd be in these meetings, we'd be in big rooms, all these boys around the thing, and they all be sitting there playing on their phones or playing with the computer or something. And I'd be listening to the presentation, and I'd raise my hand and I would say, I'm sorry, could you go over that again? Because I just really didn't understand that. And as soon as I would do that, they would all put their phones down. They'd all look up and go, oh, this must be something that we need to, watch. And it, you become kind of the leader of the band that way. Here's another thing, always be the one to take the minutes of any meeting you're ever in. Just say, hey, I'll do that. Because then the meeting went the way you thought it went, right? And the assignments from the meeting, you get to meet out, right? So if you ever have to go back and look at the minutes, you go, oh yeah, you said you were going to do that, and we talked about that. You got assigned that, but I learned that trick a long time ago. And it just there's a million things like that you have to do, but you need people to, in a lot of instances, to sort of model that for you, and to sort of show you that there is a way and a path to do that. And that's part of the reason why I'm running for office, because it's important that we have women in public service and office who look like leaders, right? So when we look at the pantheon of presidents, it's a bunch of old white guys. It ain't gonna change this year. And so think of how cool it would be if Kamala Harris ever became our president, if for no other reason than more than half of the country could look up and go, hey, I could do that. She can do it, I can do it. And so it's important on lots of different levels, but some of it is just for what the optics of it are of what leadership looks like. Leadership does not have to be old, male, and white. Now, believe me, I am married to an old white guy, so I don't have a complete, it's not like I hold it against him, but I really appreciate that he understands the struggle. And so, whereas I used to introduce myself as the chairman of the Department of Anesthesiology, he'd go, you're the chairperson. And he corrects that in every single person who ever makes that mistake. And so it's, again, I don't mean to sound like I'm, got a huge chip on my shoulder. Because I really don't. I've been incredibly fortunate. I would just like to say instead that I have my eyes wide open, and I want to make sure that I smooth the path for those people who come behind me.
And now Monica, ask you a question.
Hi, Dr. Enneking. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here today. We are honored to have you, but one thing we would like to know is how you achieve a work-life balance while balancing clearly two major career responsibilities.
Well, I have really good hair dye. I mean, everything that I would say would sound like such a cliche. You have to do something you love. You have to be passionate about it. But I do kind of go back to that. You have to make sure that your job's working for your life, even if it's 2 jobs, even if it's 3 or 4 jobs. And think of how fortunate that I have been. Oh, so incredibly fortunate. My children were healthy. They were happy. They were really glad that I went to work, or else I really would have been in their business and they wouldn't have been as happy. But I was able to afford to have a housekeeper. I was able to afford to have somebody who would cut my yard. I was able to afford to when I needed to cut back on my work a little bit because my family needed that, I was able to do that because my husband, had made a good salary. So incredibly fortunate I've been. Not everybody is blessed that way. And I feel deeply that it is my responsibility to make sure that I make things easier for other people, right? You shouldn't have to work 3 jobs to be able to pay your rent, put food on the table, and buy a new pair of shoes for your kids at school time. But that's where we are today. And that's just not fair. I work in a team. Every day I work in a team. And I'm important in the team, but you know what? So's the guy that is washing the floors down afterwards, and the person that's handing the instruments to the surgeon, and I can't do my job without them. So why should they have to work 2 jobs in order to take care of their kids? So the work-life balance, I probably didn't answer that very well, but it is just important that you remember that life truly is kind of a marathon and not a sprint, right? And so the other thing you got to remember, like I said, these are all little cliches. The enemy of good is perfect, right? So if what you have done with the time allotted and the information that you have is good and it's going to keep somebody safe, it's way better to just go ahead and do that than to wait until you have everything just perfectly lined up. In my business, I would still be taking care of the first patient I had today, still waiting for all the things to line up. So find something you love to do. Make sure that you are taking care of your personal life so you have the strength to get up every day and do what it is you love to do. And make sure you understand and appreciate just how fortunate you are.
Dr. Enneking, what is your stance on abortion and partial birth abortions?
So I've had to participate in termination of pregnancy events. It's not anything anybody wants to do. So when we have a conversation about women's health and their right to choose, I really like to move that conversation to contraception. Contraception really needs to be free, accessible, and effective. And if we made that happen, we wouldn't be having this conversation about abortion. It would be incredibly rare and only done for real reasons that the health of the mother, or it just, nobody wants to do this. It's not, but it should be up to the woman to decide. I don't have any qualms about that. But really, why can't we move this discussion up? Because you certainly don't want me legislating who sleeps with who, right?
Thank you so much, Dr. Enneking. Right now, what we want to do is open it up for just general questions.
Sure.
So yeah, if anybody wants to raise their hand or just jump in, you guys can do that right now.
What is your stance on partial birth abortions?
What do you mean by partial birth abortions?
In the second trimester.
Well, there are very few indications for that. I don't know exactly what you're asking me.
Like, should they be legal or not?
There are some times when you need to do that, but they are incredibly rare what that indication would be for that. I can't say that I have seen that very often, and no, I don't think that they should be something that is done, without really good information. But there are times when it needs to be done, and I think that that's a decision that you should have as a well-informed person. But it wouldn't certainly be any easy decision to make.
Okay, Maggie, you can go.
Thank you so much. So first of all, Dr. Enneking, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you having you here, and I really admire your dedication to service in medicine and politics. So thank you. So my question is, as someone who is a pre-medical student who is interested in both politics and medicine myself, would you say that an effective way to affect public policy and medicine would be to work for an administrative agency such as the CDC, or to run for office such as yourself?
I think there's lots of ways to get there. I think it is important that our representative bodies have a variety of perspectives, right? So one of the things that I will bring is sort of a lifetime of taking care of patients. And so, which gives me a perspective that I don't think anybody else in the Florida State Legislature will have. I think having a deep understanding of policy is probably not a bad background to have, but it would be a different perspective. Running for office, I think, is I think if there are clearly some people, when they wake up in the morning, what they want to do is run for office. I don't think I'm one of those people. I just did it because I saw it as the only way to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. But some people just have that sort of burnished into them. And I would say, if you want to run for office, it's important that you have some expertise somewhere. Because just because you showed up and you went to the University of Florida is probably not the expertise that we need in public service. I think it's probably important to have some real life experience, whether that's in policy or whether that's in clinical medicine or whatever it is. I just think it's important to have some real life experience.
All right, Edwidge, you can ask your question.
Hi, I actually have two questions. I'm a poli-sci major myself, and I'm minoring in women's studies. And an often question that we get is, can women balance the life of being, if you can balance being a woman and having a career as well as having children and a family? So I just wanted to ask you about that. And do you feel that, how do you feel as somebody who wants to take a position of political leadership without, like, for lack of better terms, like the background experience in politics, like how do you feel that differentiates you from your contenders?
Hang on just a second, let me get rid of this. And the second question was what, I'm sorry?
How do you feel like coming from a medical background and not per se having that political science background, differentiate you from your other components?
All right, well, the first question is, it doesn't matter what kind of job you get, it is hard to balance having kids and having a job. There's pros and cons to everything, right? And there are very few families that can afford to have children and not have both parents work. And so I think you have to make sure that the arrangements that you make for your family you're comfortable with. I think that's one thing that's really super important. My husband was fabulous. And so the advice I got when I was in medical school was make sure that your life partner is, your best friend and will be supportive. And you never know when you start these things off, if that is going to be true. And I kind of lucked out on that one. Although not to say that we didn't have our fair share of arguments about who was more important and needed to go to work that day when one of the kids was sick. That was probably the toughest issue that we had to overcome when we were, new parents. But overcome it we did. And my children, I think at various and sundry times wished that I didn't work as much as I did because a lot of their friends' moms didn't. But by the time they got to college and they realized how much more independent they were than many of their colleagues and peers in college, they were like, oh, I guess it was a good thing that mom made sure I knew how to make eggs. And of course, I will say neither of my kids are in medicine, so I don't know if that is good or bad. But my husband and I would sometimes get carried away talking about things, and my daughter would roll her eyes and say, can we please just talk about soccer? And so that kind of became our code word for when we needed to quit talking about medicine. And that actually worked pretty well. The second part of your question, I don't know, you'll have to ask me again because I remember I thought about it and I thought, oh, that's a good question.
I think
for the third time.
Yes, it's about how you like a lack of political experience like differentiates you from your.
That's right. I surround myself with these really smart, incredibly smart political science people. And they have, and it's sort of, they can give me expert advice, and I love that. But I can give them something back, and that is that I was a consumer of politics for a long time, so I can give them back the perspective of what all those people were mailing stuff out to, what they feel like when they get my 10th mailer. And they're like, really, this woman is sending me another one of these because I don't need another one from her, and that sort of thing. So I think I bring an interesting perspective. I have a healthy enough ego that I can speak up for myself when I think that I need to have an opinion about something, but I am also happy to follow their expert advice most of the time.
Yep. Thank you very much for that. We have one last closing question, and is, if you had to choose today, what would be the most memorable moment that you've had in your time in the field?
Oh gosh, as an anesthesiologist?
Yes.
Oh, there's so many. You know, it is such a privilege and an honor to do what we get to do. But I guess one time, and this is going to sort of, you guys are kind of go, really? I was working at our surgery center, and I was coming around the corner, but I heard my fellow talking to one of our residents. So you go to medical school, and then you're a resident, and then you become a fellow to become an expert at something, and then you go into that field. Anyway, my fellow was talking to somebody she was guiding through a procedure, and I stopped. You know, I kind of before I came around the corner, I stopped, and I listened to how she was directing the resident to do this procedure. And it was almost word to word what would come out of my mouth. And I thought, how cool is this? You know, because she's a fabulous fellow. She's a fabulous anesthesiologist now. And it just made me so proud that I was able to share my expertise with her, and now she could share it with somebody else, who will then share it with somebody else. And that's kind of, you grow this sort of culture of how to do things the right way. And I think that I was very proud about that. But, on any given day, I mean, what we get to do is, so I saved a life today. Truly, I saved a life today. How cool is that? I mean, come on, how cool is that? And to get to be a part of that, and to do it the right way, and to, you know, what we get to do is cool. Now, believe me, there are some horrible days, just horrible, awful, terrible days that you think, and every day I've had something like that happen, I make sure that I review it, and I think, how can I make sure that that never ever happens again? And if you do that, and you are doing your best every day, and you're being honest with your patients, and you're being honest with your colleagues, then you know, those horrible, awful days get further and further apart, and everybody gets better and better. And I think that that's one of the important things, is to make sure that you're always striving to get better. Maybe not perfect, but better. So I really have enjoyed speaking to all of you. I am very accessible. If any of you have any questions, any follow-up questions, my email is enneking@ufl.edu. And I would be happy to answer any of them. I'm super proud that you guys still want to go into healthcare, despite, you know, everything that has been in the news for the last 6 months. It really is a testament to that you are doing this for all the right reasons. And I really feel like healthcare is going to be in a good place because of people like you, who are passionate about what you're doing, but who recognize that you're in this for making things better for patients. And I think that that's hugely important. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Enneking. We really appreciated it so much. And thank you for being on the front lines during this pandemic. And I know definitely it's going to get stressful if there's second wave. So we're really wishing you luck and strength. And yeah, we're going to be posting, we want to take a picture with you over Zoom, like a screenshot picture. So
No worries.
Yeah, so Monica is going to do that, I think. Let me put it in gallery. And she'll count it off.
There's multiple pages, so if you guys, those of you who feel comfortable, put on your cameras, but otherwise, just smile. So, ready?
This is pretty cool.
Ready? Next. Okay, that's all. Thank you guys all for joining MHPMP today. It was a great turnout.
Yeah, we're really happy. We're so honored to have everybody here. And I'm going to post the, oh, where's the, oh, there it is. It should be, okay. That, you should scan it and you can get all your information there. I'll also be posting our email if you guys need to reach out to us, and Dr. Enneking's email. And remember to register to vote today. It is the last day to register in Florida. You really need to get out there, make sure your address is up to date, and make sure that you are registered so that, and vote well in advance of November 3rd. Please do not wait. Have a plan, make a plan with your friends. Just get as many people as you know to vote. And yeah, that is all of our advice for today.
Excellent.
Thank you very
guys
much.
take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Alex, do you want to post the link in the chat, please?
Yeah.
Or me and I'll post it.
Let me see.